Hey everyone and welcome back. So one of the first big question every Angular developer asks is how do I get my components to talk to each other? So we learn about @input and @output and you also learn about services, but it's not always clear, when to use which one. So this confusion can lead to messy and complicated code. So sometimes you might find yourself passing data through 5 different components just to get it to where it needs to go, right? So this is a common problem known as prop drilling. So in this video, we are going to master component communication. We'll look at a common messy scenario and then refactor it into clean, scalable, Angular way by using a shared service. So understanding this difference will make your application architecture so much better. So let's dive in. Okay, so to understand this problem, I have created a brand new Angular project, as you can see here. So we are going to create 3-level component hierarchy. So basically we'll have 3 components, our grandparent, our parent, and a child component. Okay. So basically we want to show data in our grandparent component and we want to change it using our child component. Okay. But there is this parent component in between. So how do we do that? That is what we will see. So I'll open the terminal and inside this we'll create all of these 3 components. So as you can see, we are using ngc command to create our grandparent, our parent, and our child component. We are also creating our service ngs data service. Basically this will be our improved solution. Okay. So I'll press enter and you will see this will create all the components we need. So we have got our child, our grandparent, and our parent component. Perfect. So now let's go into our grandparent component and connect all of them together. Okay. So what we will do is we'll go in grandparent and basically our grandparent will render our parent component. Okay. And this parent component will render our child component. So that's the hierarchy we are following. Okay. So I've already got the code here. You can see basically this is our grandparent component and we are showing data from child. So we are saying data from child will appear here and we are showing data using this data from child variable. Okay. So this is what we will be getting from our child. So we need to send data from child to this parent and then parent will send it to grandparent. Okay. Which is this. So what we are doing, we are loading our parent here. Okay. Inside the grandparent, we are loading our parent. So now in order to do that, we need to go in our component and we need to import our parent component, right? That's it. So with this, you will see when we go here, the error is gone. So we are loading our parent component properly. So now inside parent, we need to load our child. Okay. So inside this component, we need to load our child. So basically this is the parent component. We need to load our child here, right? So I'll just take this and replace it. So you can see what we are doing. We are saying parent component, and what parent component does it doesn't hold any data, right? It just need to pass data from child to parent, parent to child. So we are saying here, I'm just passing data through and we need to load our app child. So we need to again import it. So we'll say here child component. Perfect. You can see the error is gone. So now we'll go in our child component. Okay, so we'll replace this bit. Okay, so you can see we've got a h4 saying child component and it has a button. So send data to grandparent. So this is where our reaction starts. So child parent wants to send data to grandparent whenever the button is clicked. Okay, but it cannot send directly because there is a hierarchy we are maintaining, right? Because we have child to parent and then parent to grandparent, right? Okay, and in order to see all of this on our local host, we need to make sure the root parent component, which is our grandparent, right? We need to show this inside our app component.html. So I'll just take this from here and inside app component.html, we need to display it, right? So we'll say app like this. Perfect. And we also need to import it. This is just some basic stuff we have to do. So we'll say grandparent component. Okay, now let's focus on our problem. So we'll focus on the messy way, which is prop drilling. Okay, as I mentioned, where user use @output. Okay, so here's the scenario. Whenever user clicks the button in child component, right, we need to update the data from child, which is basically this one. Okay, in our this component. Okay, basically grandparent. So in this scenario, if you see the parent component, it doesn't care about the data at all. It is just in the middle because that is how we are rendering. And there could be a lot of cases like this when you are coding your application where you have a component which doesn't need to care about the data, but it is the middleman, right? So right now in this case it is. So a common and a messy way to solve this problem is by creating a chain of @output event emitters. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. So what we'll do is we'll go in our child component, basically this one, right? So we need to send some data from here to our parent to grandparent, right? So what we need to do whenever we want to send, we use output emitter. Perfect. And what for that we'll have a method. We'll call it send data. And inside this method, we'll update this event. So we'll say this dot data event, and whenever we want to send some data, we use emit. So we say this dot data event dot emit. Inside this, we can have our message. So we'll say hello from child because child is updating. So yeah, perfect. Now what do we need to do inside our child component HTML? we need to do this logic, right, of basically sending the data using this method on a button click. So we'll define our button here. We'll say click event listener, call the send data method. Okay, this one. Perfect. So whenever user clicks on the send data, it will output an event emitter with this data event. Okay, basically hello from child. Perfect. Now the parent, basically its parent is this one, right? Now the parent has to catch this event and then re-emit with its own output to the grandparent. So inside our parent component TS file, this one, we'll go here and we'll create our new output event emitter. Perfect. Now we need a method, right? So that it can also pass the data. So we'll say pass data through. What do we need? We just need to pass data to our grandparent. So we'll say data of type string. Inside this, we'll say this dot data event from parent dot emit, and we'll pass this data. Perfect. Now we'll go in our HTML and we will listen for our child event and then pass this method. So if you remember in our child component, we have this data event, right? So output we can listen to wherever we want. So inside this, I will listen for this event, okay? Whenever basically someone clicks that button. So for this data event, what I'll do, I'll call this method, which is pass data through, and I'll pass the data. So here I'll say event. Perfect. So now whenever user clicks on the child component, okay, basically this will emit this data event, and inside our parent component, you can see we are having another method which passes the data and we receive it using our data event. Okay, now we need to go inside our grandparent and we need to listen for parent event. Similarly, we are listening for our child, we need to listen for parent, which is this event, our data event from parent. So we'll go in our grandparent component HTML, and here inside the app parent, we'll look for our this data from parent. So here we'll say, you see this data event from parent comes up, and inside this we need to call a method. So that method basically which will be updating our this data from child. Okay, so I'll call this method update data, okay, like this, and this would be again $event like this. So now I'll go in my TS and create this bits. Okay, so grandparent basically is gonna receive this data, right? So I'll define my variable here. First is data from child, okay, and data from child basically in the beginning we are just waiting, so I'll say waiting, and this method basically this will update our method. So you see this method we created, update data, right? So I'll take this method here. Perfect. So now whenever child clicks, you see what we are doing, we are sending data from our child to our parent to our grandparent, and we are updating our this property which is data from child. Okay, so now if I save it, and here you can see that our application is running. Perfect. So now you see the grandparent says data from child will appear here. It says waiting because we haven't clicked the button yet. As soon as I click the button, you can see it says hello from child. So basically data went from here to here, okay, and then here to here. So you see it is working, but look at our parent component, this one. So this is full of the code that has nothing to do with its own functionality because it's just a middleman. It really doesn't need this bit of code, right? It's just there, so it needs to pass the data, and this is what is called prop drilling. So think of a situation, if we ever wanted to move the child component, we have to refactor the entire chain. So it becomes really hard to maintain, okay? So now let's see the clean Angular way to solve this problem. Okay, so the correct solution for communication between all of these distant or unrelated component is the shared injectable service, okay? So basically the service we created. So this service will act as a central hub for our data. What we'll do, we will use an RxJS BehaviorSubject to hold our data, okay? So we have the data, right? So we need to hold it. So for that, we'll use the RxJS BehaviorSubject. So what a BehaviorSubject do is that it is really great whenever you want to hold the current value for any component that subscribes, okay? So first thing we'll do is we'll create a private BehaviorSubject inside this, so which can hold the data, okay? So like this, I've got this private variable data subject, and we are using our BehaviorSubject to hold the data, okay? Like this, and it will be of type string, okay? And we are already defined it with waiting. Perfect. So right now it is private. So what do we need to do? We need to use our observable to make it public and that anyone can subscribe it. So for that, I'll say here data observable like this, and this would be this dot data subject dot as observable, okay? So now whoever wants to subscribe, they can get the latest data using this observable. Okay, now we need to create a method so that we can update this data, right? Because from child to parent we are updating. So we'll say here update data. So we'll say this dot data subject. So we are taking this behavior subject, okay, and we are updating it. So whenever we want to do that, we use next. So this is the data subject dot next, and we'll update it with new data. Okay, so now our this data observable will subscribe to it, okay, and it will be there with the new data, okay. Perfect. So now let's refactor all the component according to our services, which is a clean way to solve this problem of prop drilling, okay. So we'll go in our child component first. So inside the TS file here, what do we need to do? First, as we are dealing with service, we need to inject our service. We do not need this at the output emitter, so I'll remove this. Okay, and we also don't need this. Okay, now we have the methods available of this data service. So inside this send data method, we'll say this dot data service dot, you can say we have the update data method. Inside this we can pass our message, which is hello from child using a service. Perfect. Now comes the next bit, which is our parent component. This is the best part. Now we do not need any of the logic we have in parent component because we are using our service. So we can delete all this event handling logic. I'll go here and delete these 2 bits. Okay, so we do not need any inputs, any output, no pass-through method. This is the clean component now. Okay, so we can also go in our HTML and we can remove these bits as well. So data event, we can remove this here like this. Perfect. So now finally let's go to the grandparent component. So it no longer needs to listen to this update data, okay, because now we are using our service, so it doesn't need to listen for these events. So what we'll do is I'll remove this bit, okay, and here I'll inject my service. So again I'll say private data service, and this would be again our inject, and I'll say here data service. Perfect. So now you can see we can basically directly subscribe using our data service, and we can load the data inside this. Easy as that. So here I'll say data from child. So whenever we are using a stream of data to load, we use observable, okay, like this. And here inside this, I will load data using the service. So I'll say this dot data service dot, and what do we need? We need to get this data observable, right? Like this. Perfect. So you can see what we are doing. We are getting the updated data from this data observable from our central hub, which is our data service, okay, and we are storing it inside this data from child. Now we need to go here inside our HTML, and inside this we do not need this, so I'll remove this. Okay, perfect. And for this, now to load the data, what do we need to do? We need to use our async pipe. So this would be $, because we are getting a observable stream of data, so we need to use the async pipe in order to use that. Perfect. So now there is the error, so we need to import our async pipe in our Angular command from here. So here we'll have async pipe, as you can see, and we'll just import it. Okay, now you can see the error is gone. Okay, so now if we save it and we go to our component, you can see right now we are seeing data from child will appear here waiting. As soon as I click on this, you will say hello from child using a service. So you see our service is working properly. So the result is same, but our architecture is infinitely better. So the parent component, which is this component, okay, this is no longer involved. You see, it is in the middle, but it's not involved. And the child and grandparent are interacting directly. So here's the simple rule of thumb. Use input and output event emitter for direct, simple parent-child communication. Okay. For everything else, such as communicating with a distant relatives like this, such as a sibling, a relative, or a cousin, we use a shared service. So the service pattern I showed you is just a small example, but if you want to see how we use these services to manage a much more complex state where we use ng-rx, then check out my complete Jira clone tutorial. It's linked right at the top of the description. If you found this video helpful, please hit the like and subscribe button. I'll see you guys in the next video.